we finished, we wrapped, and they literally said, "That's a wrap on Mia Isaac." And I went to, first I cried.
Now you
First
cried.
I went to the car and I cried, of course. I cried a little bit. And then I went to Hannah and I was like, "Can we do it one more time?"
You are Eric Klingbeil, and this is the unseen word.
Our guest today is Mia Isaac, and Mia Isaac is one of my favorite human beings. She is a young actor who I have worked with for years, and I'm so excited for everyone to learn about her, learn about how she became Mia Isaac, which you'll get a kick out of that. She's just an amazing person. Mia can be seen in an upcoming film with John Cho. She can also be seen in the upcoming film Not Okay with Zoe Deutsch, which she happened to book while shooting the previous film, which was shooting in New Zealand. So we're gonna get to hear all about that. She also has some projects on the horizon that we can't really talk about, but there are some very cool things happening in this wonderful young person's life, and we can't wait to share it all with you.
To me, you're humble. I mean, do you think you're humble?
That's a loaded question.
So let's unpack it
I
then.
feel like I feel like I've actually struggled with that a lot, because I feel like as an actor you have to be self-centered a little bit, and so I've always worried that I was too self-centered. Because
Why do you think you have to be self-centered as an actor?
Because in order to critique myself, and my career is about the way I am on screen, and so in order to critique myself and to better my acting, I have to watch myself on screen, and some might say that's vanity to watch yourself, but it's not like I'm watching myself in like oh, look at me, I'm so pretty or whatever, but it's more of in like, how can I make this better, how can I improve, and so from an outside view, I guess I've struggled a lot with how other people see me, which I'm working on. But people used to say I was self-centered, and they'd be like, "You only care about yourself," and I guess that did hurt me, and I never wanted I never wanted it to be like I only cared about myself, because that's not true. But I do want to be humble. Yeah, I do want to be humble. I don't know if I am.
Do you remember when that person said you were self-centered or whatever it was? Do you remember that specific situation? Or do you just remember?
I remember like many situations.
Really?
Yeah, I feel like
How old were you?
I was maybe 10, like all of middle school, really, like from 10 to 12 or 13. And my parents always taught me to be very self-assured. My dad has this saying that he'll say to me whenever I doubt myself. He'll look at me and he'll be like, "You're Mia Isaac." And he'll say that to me every time. Every time I have any self-doubt, he'll be like, "Don't they know you're Mia Isaac?" And so like he ingrained that into my mind since I was a child. And so I got it into my head that like, I'm Mia Isaac. And so like my parents always told me like I was a golden child, or like I was special. And so I felt like I was special. And so growing up, I'd tell kids around me, I'd be like, "I'm going to be an actor." And I was like, "I'm going to be on the big screen." And for them, they were like, "That's really self-centered of you to say," or like, I don't know. And so for me, being at that age and having the confidence to just be like, "I'm going to be a successful actor." And when people are like, "Oh, well, what are you going to be if that doesn't work out?" And I'm like, "It's going to work out." Then they're like, "You're crazy." And so I guess people mistook that for me being vain, and then when they told me that, I took it personally, and so I went from being really self-assured to like having a lot of insecurities, and now I'm building myself back up to the way I was as a kid, which I guess we're all trying to do, is get back to how we were as kids.
Yeah. It's very fascinating. I didn't know that about your parents. I don't know a lot about your parents, because like I said, you're more of a mature individual overall, and so I met your mom obviously
Yeah.
a good handful of times, but I didn't. You'd never told me that you're Mia Isaac. You know, it's very funny. My mom used to always say that I was the golden child, literally verbatim. Like that would be something. And yeah, it's fascinating. Right when you said that, actually, I was like, I was thinking about, because she did instill in me though. It was this concept of you can do anything. Like there's nothing you can't do. And always this mindset that, like, almost more than that, like, you are destined to do great things, which is great in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
In other ways, it's a little challenging, because if I have this idea that I am the golden child, well, there's quite a lot of pressure on that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so I think, like, if you're Mia Isaac, and that is this character
Mm-hmm.
who achieves success,
Right.
well, you better not fall short.
Right. And then that brings me back to like imposter syndrome and feeling like my parents have these like high expectations of me, and not really expectations, but just like they believe in me and they believe that I'm someone that sometimes I'm not sure I'm that. And so I have that like imposter syndrome of like, you don't know how like broken I am, you know, like my parents say that I'm the golden child, and I'm like, but am I really? So
I get it. Yeah, I get it. Well, you know, I'd love to talk a little bit about your experience. What the last time where that was probably the last time where we had like a private session outside of class.
yeah.
After the first film, and then in between. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like they were obviously, so both projects were very different, but also very, very similar for multiple reasons. But they were kind of like, I guess, is it vain to say that it was my big break? I guess in like
Maybe don't worry so much about being
Yeah.
vain.
I would
L-
call
allow-
it, I would call it a big break in terms of I had never done anything of that size before, and I felt a little bit in over my head, but I also felt like I had been working up to that moment for my entire life. And so it was surprising for me, because going into it, I never felt like I was unprepared.
And talk about what it was, just
Yeah.
so people
Going
have
into-
context, like in terms of the project,
Yeah.
and how that came about a little bit.
So at the start of 2021, really, I started at the end of 2020, December 2020, I started auditioning for this movie called Don't Make Me Go. And the audition process was like a month, almost 2 months, of just back and forth callbacks and everything. And
Which, just so people know that don't act, that's pretty wild.
yeah.
That's a wild ride in
Yeah.
itself. Like normally it's not that many back and forths, and
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a really, really emotional process for me, because it felt like I was on the verge of something, but I didn't know if it was going to happen or not, and that something could potentially change the course of my entire life. And so it was like I'd get random like anxiety attacks where I was like, oh my God. But it was like definitely, I think it was like 7 or 8 sessions total over the course of, they were like dispersed between like 2 weeks each. But it was super stressful, but also really exciting. And when I found out that I did book it, I just felt like it felt right. It didn't feel like it had come at the wrong time or like I wasn't ready. It felt like it was perfect timing. And so I felt completely prepared for it. And I felt like I believed in myself enough as an actor where I was like, I think I deserve this, and I think I am going to be able to step up to the plate.
I'd like you to talk about the role itself, and because
Yeah.
by the time you booked it, you knew you'd read the whole script. You'd done callbacks with the director,
Yeah.
producers.
Yeah. I mean, so the movie itself, the premise of the movie is it's a coming of age dramedy. And it's a road trip movie about this father and his daughter. And this man finds out that he has a brain tumor in his head. And he's a single father to his 15-year-old daughter. And he decides that because he's been told that he only has 1 year left to live, so he decides to take his daughter on a road trip across the country to meet her estranged mother. And it's about their relationship, and
you're the daughter.
I'm the daughter.
And the father is
John Cho.
right.
Yeah. And so I fell in love with the movie the second that I read the script. It's a beautiful, beautiful story, and it's heartbreaking, and it's funny, and it's just like, it's everything in one movie. Like, it's really like a wholesome family story. It's a story about the strongest love that exists, which is the love between a parent and their child. And I cried when I read the script. I remember I read the script before I actually booked it, because I did the director's callback, and she automatically assumed that I had read the script, and so she was like, "I loved your tape, and I feel like you totally got the character from reading the script." And I was like, "Well, actually, I haven't read the script at all."
Oh, you're honest?
Yeah. And so she was like, "Whoa, like that makes me like love your tape even more." And so I read the tape. I'm trying to like explain it without spoiling anything. So I'm
Sure.
yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so I read the script after our session, and I was like sobbing in tears, and all I could think was like, I really want to book this because it means so much to me. Like, I think the person I'm probably closest to in the world is my dad, and so I noticed so many parallels between their relationship and my relationship with my father, and I felt so close to this character because she's so strong-willed and driven, and also hiding this like emotional side to her, and it's just, it's so beautiful, and I loved it. And so that made me even more nervous, because when you care about something, then you get scared. And so I was like, I care about this so much, so hopefully I book it. And when I did, I was really, really happy. And what's funny is throughout the whole audition process, it's, for the most part, it's kind of a comedy throughout the movie. But there's one very big emotional scene, and I spoke with the director, and she said specifically, I don't want you to do that scene in the audition room, which I thought was really interesting, because most directors would be like, I need to make sure that you can do this emotional scene and that you have this range, so I'm going to give you the hardest scene to do in the audition. And she said, I don't think that's fair to you to have to do that on a self-tape, and I think that's something that you should experience on the set when you're there. And so I thought that was really interesting. And
Yeah, that's a very
yeah.
artist way
Yeah.
of approaching it versus like a producer's way.
Right. And she started off as an actor before she started directing, and so that was her approach to it.
What's her name?
Her name is Hannah Marks.
Hannah Marks.
And so I obviously I felt really close to her just because I felt very similar to her in that she started as an actor and had these aspiring dreams to be a filmmaker and a writer, and went on to do those. And so anyways, with the emotional scene, because I hadn't done it in the audition room, and because she basically told me to my face that she had this belief that I would be able to do it, and she said, I'm giving you this role because I saw your other scenes, but I believe you can do this big emotional scene on the day. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, now all of a sudden there's this pressure for me to be like amazing on the day. And I was like, you believe in me, and I don't know if I can live up to that, you know?
You're me.
Yeah. And so then I got the schedule for shooting, and they scheduled that emotional scene for the last day. And so it was a 3-month-long shoot. Or no, 2.5 months, sorry. It was 2.5 months, and that was the last day.
And you might want to mention the proximity of where you were filming.
Yeah, and so I was shooting across the world in New Zealand.
Literally the opposite side of the world.
It was mid-COVID, so I couldn't bring my family. It was just me and my mom. And we went through a 2-week quarantine together in like a little hotel room. And it was, I will say, like, the whole process was, it felt like a large part of my life, which is weird because I've been alive for almost 18 years and it was only a few months, but it felt like a really big part of my life because I booked Don't Make Me Go in January, and we didn't fly to New Zealand until April. And so I had these 4 months of just anticipation, but also this opportunity to ground myself and find the character, and that's not something people get. When I booked Not Okay, which was the next movie I booked after that, I had 1 week before I flew. I flew from New Zealand to Atlanta, then straight from Atlanta 8 days later to New York. And so I really, really was blessed with those 4 months. And I do believe that I used them, and I used them wisely, I think. Anyways, we were shooting in New Zealand 2.5 months, and I was starting to get in my head a little bit because most of the scenes were very fun, and I got to know John, and he was very funny. He's a known comedy actor. He did Harold and Kumar, and so we really balanced well together with our chemistry and everything, and telling jokes and all of those things. And so there were a few little emotional scenes dispersed in there, and there were times where I felt like I didn't get to the place that I wanted to be. And so because of that, it planted seeds of doubt that I wouldn't be able to do it on the big day, especially since it was looming. And so I remember when the day came, I was journaling. I was journaling, and I kind of wrote these entries in my character at first, and getting into that headspace. But I wasn't as experienced, I guess, as I am now. And so I didn't really understand how the shooting process goes. And I didn't understand that it's not a self-tape. Whereas in self-tapes, you give it 100% of what you've got all the time. And I didn't realize that we spent a whole day doing just that one scene.
Wow.
And we did wide shots, we did mediums, we did a 2-shot, and then we did close-ups on each, and that was the last thing we did. And so I went into it being I'm gonna give 100 on every single take, but there were 50 takes. And so I remember the first scene we did, I was so emotional, and it was this super wide, we're specks in the distance, and I'm sobbing, crying, and I'm we're yelling at each other, and I was oh, that was amazing. And then we walk off, and everybody's why is your shirt wet? And I'm I was crying, and they're oh, we didn't see any of that. And I was okay, I'll just do it all again. And so we did the wide shots 2 or 3 more times, and I was emotional during those, but then they were okay, we're gonna go to lunch. And we went to lunch, and I was oh my God, we're doing our close-up after this. And I was I feel the scene was very emotional, and then you kind of come to an end where it's we've come full circle, and there's this embrace. And so because I was so in the moment and in the character, I felt I was emotional and I was upset, and then I was able to come to terms with it, and I accepted it. And I felt as Wally, as the character, I felt I was okay now. And so now I was how do I get back to how I was feeling before, and portray those emotions, you know? And that's when I started to really doubt myself. And I remember, I think I actually do have my journal. Can I get it?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think I did bring it with me. Okay, yeah.
Oh, I love it.
So this is my little diary thing.
Okay,
and
so if you're listening to this, so now
Yeah.
Mia just got her,
Yeah.
You just got your
I
journal.
got my journal. This has been
journal.
my diary since I was 16.
Okay, and this is the journal that you were journaling in.
The whole time I was in New Zealand.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I think, let me see if I can find it. Got a bunch of things in
And so now you are looking for the journal entry from the day where you shot this super emotional scene.
Yeah.
Which you totally crushed without the camera being able to see you.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
And so it was, I remember specifically, I was sitting in the car, and we were about to start shooting, and they were just setting up. And
So now this is when you're going to be doing the close-up.
yeah, and we were about to do the close-up. I wrote June. It was June 26, 2021. And if you're watching, there's a little. This was my little. I was just freaking out.
Right. So you basically in big.
Yeah,
Big
this was
text, you have.
these were some of the lines and some of the feelings that I, as the character, was feeling.
Right. So you wrote out some of that.
Yeah, and so I was sitting in the car and they were setting up, and I think we had 10 minutes.
Okay.
And this is what I wrote to myself. I said,
Okay.
I fear I might have nothing left to give. I am beginning to question my talent, my skill, my qualification. I am scared. I am so scared. This could be the defining moment. I feel like I haven't done enough prep. I haven't been focused. I am tired and worried and so scared. Everyone keeps telling me that they have no doubts. They have undeniable faith. But why? What have I done to prove that? I don't want to let anyone down. I don't want to let myself down. Am I ready? I'm not sure. I'm scared. It's been a long journey. It's been fun. And I've done scenes I'm proud of, but now I can only think of the ones I'm not proud of. If I couldn't do it then, can I do it now? I'm scared. I just want to sleep for a very, very long time. I hope I am capable. I hope I get it right. I hope I make everyone proud. I hope I leave feeling accomplished. I feel so numb, and I fear what that means. And so, obviously, going into it from this place of fear and anxiety and self-doubt, I didn't give a great performance because
it.
I was in my head, and I was thinking about all these other people around me and them watching me literally on screens out there. I was thinking about my mom watching me and Hannah, the director, watching me, and thinking of the time that I did the audition and she told me she knew I could do this. And I was just building up all of this anxiety within me, and we did it once, twice, 3 times, and I was like, I can't do this. And because I was telling myself that story, that was the result. And we finished, we wrapped, and they literally said, "That's a wrap on Mia Isaac." And I went to, first I cried.
Now you're
First
crying.
I went to the car and I cried, of course. I cried a little bit. And then I went to Hannah and I was like, "Can we do it one more time?" And she was like, we packed everything up, we're moving on. And the sun was starting to set, and so we were gonna lose light. And I was like, "Can I just get one more take? Because I feel like I didn't give that scene what it deserved." And she was like, "Okay." And so.
And talk about what this means,
Yeah, I mean.
in terms of the whole production.
Yeah, it costs. I don't know how much money it cost them to do that.
Right.
I don't know if I want to know. But I mean, it took them another 15 minutes to reset up all the equipment. They had already done John's side, so we were good with that. We just needed one more take, and then they would do an establishing shot or something without us there, with the stunt doubles or something. And so they needed time for that, but we were an hour away from wrap, and if I took too long, then we weren't going to get it. And so they set everything back up, and Hannah put her head on the line for me. I remember walking away, and I could hear her getting yelled at for what she did. I think it's so funny because I don't think people would have done that if she was a male director. And a lot of the crew openly questioned her, and I think part of that was because she's a female and because she's a young female. And so when she told everybody, "All right, we're setting back up," they were like, "What are you doing? We have one shot." And she's like, "I know, I have that set up, but we're gonna redo this." And everybody's like, "We're not gonna have to blah 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 blah." But she believed in me, and she gave me a chance, and I'm so grateful for that, because I took that 15 minutes and I just sat down, and I didn't think about anything. I didn't think about the scene. I didn't think about my journaling. I just sat, and I remember closing my eyes and just breathing. Just breathing. And we went back to the scene, and I did it again. And I could always say I could have done better, or I could always say I wish I had done a better job, but I am proud of what I did, and I do think I did the best that I could with the person and the actor that I was at the time. And I think that's okay. And that's the whole point of it all. That's the whole reason it was the first thing I'd ever done. And in those circumstances, I'd just turned 17 and I'd never done anything else. And I held myself to the standard that I had to be like, I had to give like an Oscar award-winning performance. And I think more important than the performance I gave that day, though I do think it was good, I learned from it. And I think I'm better because of that. And so, yeah.
So when you went back to reshoot it,
Mm-hmm.
the take that you did is what
It's what they used.
it's what they used.
Yeah. I actually just saw a screening of it, and I was like, that's the take. And it was the whole take too, not just one little clip. It was what they used.
So there you go. And I think that's a great example, though, is that was the opposite of fear. Right? I mean, that epitomizes faith. Right? Because if you're going to say, me, this 17-year-old kid, is telling all of these professionals, you need to, now, you're not saying it like
Right.
that, but in essence,
Yeah.
right? You know, thinking about it through their lens, this kid who's like, you know, thinks like she needs like the art form needs to be, you know, like
Right.
whatever, you did fine, it's good. But you knew, you had faith in yourself, enough faith in yourself to say, that wasn't as good as it should be in order to tell the story
Yeah.
the way it could be told.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not just about you. Of course, yes, you want to deliver something better, but it's like you said, you know, when we first started talking in terms of telling a story, right? And you knew the story could be told better. You knew for the sake of the character. I remember, and I brought this up in class, a guy named Tim Phillips, where he said, the only person you have to justify your performance to is the character. Right?
Yeah.
Like the character, like a living, breathing entity. And you knew in that moment, if that character were to be standing in front of me, I couldn't justify what I did.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so you had the audacity to go to the director. And then the director, you know, she had to, of course, stand her ground, right? Amidst the adversity. But it paid off. And they ended up using that take.
Yeah.
And like you said, I think even more importantly, you learned so much through that process.
Yeah.
Right? So, okay, so then, which is so bananas, the fact that then you booked the project in New York, right?
Yeah.
So-
And I mean, I wasn't even, it's funny because that was the first time that I'd never even like thought about an audition or a project or anything because I was so busy. I literally did, I remember I did the first audition for it like while we were shooting and I wasn't
talk
even.
about that because just so people can understand what we're talking. Now we've
Yeah.
moved on to
So I started auditioning for a movie called Not Okay. And I did the first self-tape for it during the first week of shooting Don't Make Me Go. And I did it with my mom and I was so busy that I wasn't even off book and I never like to be not off book for a self-tape. And my mom literally held the laptop like this and I read off of the side because I was not off book at all.
because you're in the middle of shooting this huge project in New
Yeah,
Zealand.
and
it's,
so,
yeah,
but then
sure.
I almost didn't even do the audition because I was like, I'm so busy, but I didn't want to use that as an excuse. And so I did it, and I did it to the best of my ability. And then I did a callback, and I did a director's. I did all of these little things in between, but in between, I wasn't thinking about the anxiety of, oh, am I going to get called back or am I going to get because I was so busy. And so I remember like I did the last chemistry read for it like the day of a night shoot. And so I like went to bed at 4 a.m. and then I woke up at 10 to go to do the thing. And I was like, and like we'd done the shoot before, it was like a 4 a.m. night shoot, and I was doing a keg stand, and so I was like going like upside down and like back, and it was like a lot of work. I didn't know how much work keg stands were.
Which is good. I'm glad that you didn't know how much work cakes did.
But I woke up the next morning and I was just like exhausted, and so I wasn't thinking at all about anything, and I did it, and then I just didn't think about it at all. And I remember, like, I think it was like a month or 2 months into shooting, I got the call, and it was Quinn, the director of Not Okay, and she called me and she was like, I just wanted to let you know that like you booked it. And I was like, oh my God. But I didn't even like register in my mind that I didn't think about it at all. And so I didn't get the chance to think about it until I was wrapped. And from the point of wrap to the point of start on Not Okay, I think it was about, I want to say 21 days.
Wow.
And so I wrapped on Don't Make Me Go. I had 11 days left in New Zealand. After that, I flew back to Atlanta and I had 8 days. And then after those 8 days, well, I met with you during those 8 days and we talked a little bit about
Right.
my experience and everything. And then I flew straight from Atlanta to New York. And then we started shooting, I think, that week.
I want to talk a little bit about that, though, in between when you reached out to me, because that was a very mature choice on your end, and also a very strategic move in terms of understanding what you needed, you, Mia, in order to increase the chances of you being able to execute at the highest level possible, right?
Yeah.
Because you obviously went through this draining experience, but you also maybe did some things not as well as you could have in terms of your mindset and in terms of your focus. So I want you, I thought it was very cool because when you reached out to me in between the two shoots, it was well, first of all, it was very funny because you're like, I have a week. I'm like, well, you just got back from New Zealand. You're like, I'm flying to New York.
Yeah.
And again, we need to address the fact that prior to this,
I had done nothing.
right. I mean, you've done these like little
Yeah.
things, and suddenly, which is often the case,
Yeah.
it just all came at once. So you had this emotionally draining experience. You had an experience that you didn't handle as well as you would have liked to,
Yeah.
right? And now suddenly, after going through all of that, you don't really have any, I mean, just to get reacclimated to the time zone,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's what's the time difference?
It's 21 hours, I think.
Yeah. It's
So
a little bit of an adjustment. So you have all these things, and then so what prompted you to then reach out to me
I mean,
in between the two?
so my character in Not Okay was definitely, I guess, a step up emotionally from my character in Don't Make Me Go. In Not Okay, which is a movie about a young woman who fakes a trip to Paris so that she can get Instagram followers and become social media famous. But while she's faking this trip, an actual bombing occurs in Paris, and so it becomes a part of her lie. And my character in that movie is a teenage girl, 17, who is a survivor of a school shooting and lost friends and family in the shooting and has experienced severe trauma and has now become an activist against gun violence. And so every single scene in that movie of mine is an emotional scene. There's maybe one, I can think of one that's not emotional, but every single one is emotional. And my character also does spoken word. And so I have these long, like 3-page spoken word monologues that are supposed to be powerful and like gut-wrenching. And I'm like, oh my God. And so I'm like, let me call Eric. So yeah, I felt like that was necessary.
Yeah, right. And then you reach out to me, and I remember because I wasn't even going to the studio, so you came and met me at my house.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're like, I don't have much. I'm like, well, how about next week? You're like, I'll be in New York next week.
Yeah.
So you came by, but it was, and this is, I think, what's so fun about the craft is that our session wasn't about going over a script. This wasn't about the text. This wasn't about scene work. This was about you getting into a place mentally, spiritually, where you could feel confident going into this new project after you just exhausted much of what you have on this other one, and be able to do it in a way where you could again be proud of what you did, and you could justify this storytelling. So you came over and we talked a little, and I think it got emotional probably
Yeah.
at one point, and why don't you talk a little bit about what we got into, and in terms of even with the journaling,
Yeah.
what we touched on with that.
I mean, I think the biggest thing was you talked a lot about journaling with intention. And instead of letting these fearful thoughts control what I was writing down or the narrative I was telling myself, to instead take control of that. And I guess instead of letting my runaway mind and runaway thoughts control what I was writing down, to write something down that could actually benefit me and help me. And so we came up with this little thing that I could write down and say to
mantra?
myself. Yeah.
Yeah, do you remember what the mantra was?
I've got it written down. Let's see if I can find it in here.
The trusty journal. I love that thing. It's brought you down. It's brought you up.
Yeah.
It's taken you on a journey. Yeah, and I remember, I can't remember verbatim what the mantra was, but then I also do remember, as you're looking for it, I remember you reaching out to me afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
When you were on set, and
Yeah.
you were telling me about how you were doing the mantra and you were feeling the difference. So yeah, what was the mantra?
It goes, I feel free. I feel connected. There is nothing that can stop me. I am full of energy. I'd let go of any expectations, any fears or worries. I put my focus on the undeniable belief that I am capable of anything. My heart is full of gratitude. I am exactly where I should be. This experience is amazing. I am grateful for the cast and crew. I am grateful for the opportunity to do this thing that I love to do. I am an actor, and a damn good one at that. I am full of love. And so just the difference in the what I was telling myself.
Yeah, like when the juxtaposition between that and your other one where you're like, I'm worthless. I need
Yeah.
to keep my head between I should never leave this car.
Yeah.
Right.
So
but it's fascinating,
yeah.
right?
Just the difference in the words. Words have power, and even if you don't fully believe them or you're not sure if they're right, to just say these things to myself completely changed my experience, and it brought out an emotional reaction within me that I wasn't expecting.
I think it's such a good choice of words, is an emotional reaction, because when you think about emotions are your thoughts' way of speaking. Right? So if you think about that, right? Because you can't express your thinking. You can say words, but what you're really thinking, which then fires off all these circuits, which then releases all these chemicals, which is then why you feel what you're feeling. When you're emoting, it's your way of showing us how your thoughts are making you feel, right? Mm-hmm. And if we think about that for a second, well then, if these thoughts and these words can shift my emotion, well then my thoughts can actually create the reality that I'm having.
Yeah.
Well, if my thoughts can create that, well, where do my thoughts come from? Well, how about what I'm writing down on a journal and reading, right? Yeah. And even listening to you say that. I remember as we were sitting down, because I think what we did was we took what we'll call your negative journal entry, and we said, okay, what's the opposite?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm saying this and this and that and this. Okay, well, what's the like it's polarity, right? Well, I know if I'm feeling that, I can just take the opposite of that and put my focus on that.
Right.
So then talk a little bit about, so you had that mantra. You were obviously feeling a little bit better going into it. And then what was it like being on set then right after that, after you had...
I mean, yeah, it was a completely different experience for a multitude of reasons. One being that it was in America. But just like, I guess, using the tools that I learned from Don't Make Me Go, and I discovered, like on set, like, hey, I actually learned something from those 3 months in New Zealand. And I would realize it as I was doing it that I had adjusted and I was gaining experience. One of the biggest things that I think I learned was emotional endurance when it comes to being on set and doing an emotional scene when there are multiple takes and there are multiple angles, and to not be afraid to ask what the shot is and what you're going to look like, even to ask for a monitor so you can see, like, I could know what side of my face is on screen, or like if it's just the back of my head, or if it's like a super wide and you can't even see my face, and like if you can see my body, then like what am I doing with my body, and being aware of those things in a way that I wasn't at all on Don't Make Me Go. And so...
Well, but I want to touch on that too, because that's such a great example for life.
Yeah.
We're always in this sort of perpetual state of is it okay?
Right.
You know, we live so small, right? Because, you know, it's like that's you know, don't be too self-centered. And here's the thing, right? I was thinking about that word, self-centered. Self-centered. Because if you just, like, let's just take away all of our perspective on what self-centered means. If I'm self-centered, like, let's try to redefine it real quick.
Right.
If I am self-centered, if I am centered, okay, I am centered, and I am centered in myself, in who I am. Well, I would argue you have then the best capability to share the gifts that will have the greatest impact on everyone else.
Right.
Because if I'm not centered in who I am, and this doesn't mean, and of course, you know, we have, well, that's not really what self-centered is. Yeah, but let's just, see, this is another problem. Words are garbage, right? Like, one word, you know, this could mean this to someone else. It's like busy, right? I was just talking the other day with someone about this, you know. Oh, hey, you know, people will say to me, oh, you look really busy. And I go, no, I'm not busy. I don't want to be busy.
Right.
That sounds horrible. Busy, right? Busy implies I got too many balls I'm juggling, right? I'm dropping balls, right? Versus I'm steady.
Yeah.
I got a solid 5 I'm juggling, you know? Things are good. It's a lot, but we're good. There's a flow to it, right? And so I think, you know, we give words an essence to them. It's more than just a definition, right? There's an
Right.
essence to the word. You know, as you were talking about little Mia and your parents saying, you know, you're Mia Isaac. You are. And there's power to that. And you should own that. And I think everyone should own that. Right? It's like it's like we're always apologizing for everything, for who we are and what we do and all this stuff. Where it's like, no, like if I want to help you, I better have centered myself.
Yeah.
I better be self-centered and have foundation and grounding, so I have the, you know, it's just like before you put on the mask of your child, put on your mask, because you're not any good if you're dying and
Right.
trying to give the mask to your child. You know,
Right.
put on your oxygen. You needed your oxygen too. And I think the thing about it is, for whatever reason, we look at it as ego or cocky or all these things. And yes, don't get me wrong. There is a lot of that. And I know personally, there are many times in my life where narcissism has been prevalent and ego has been the driving force. But I also think because it was ingrained in your mind at such a young age that you have value, that your voice matters, that you are Mia Isaac, that you are an important individual, that has empowered you at such a young age to say, I have gifts to share. And then when you can take that empowerment and now share it with others, well, what a beautiful gift.
Right.
And to think about if every person could do that, if every person could just embrace who they are, you know, and see their intrinsic value.
Yeah.
Right? Not the value that we put on because of monetary success or this or that, but the value that you as a human being bring to life. You know, and when you can embrace that, well, oh my God, what a multitude, what a vast array of gifts you then have the potential to share. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think for you, I think it's really important to think about that and to protect that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And to keep refining it and diving into it and staying strong, but not from a place of ego or cocky, but from a place of I'm here to contribute. And you know, I just think that that's such a great thing for anybody in life, for people to think about from that perspective of empowering yourself, you know?
Yeah.
I forgot how I started on that or where it came
I
from.
forgot too.
Yeah. We'll figure it out. But you then were at the point where you're now going to New York and now we were talking about just asking.
Right.
We were saying like people are so scared, right? Like how am I being framed or whatever. We're so scared because we're like, oh, I don't want to.
Right.
Like why do you think that is?
And I mean, there's one thing I do want to touch on is like I learned a lot from being across another female actor and watching how she was taken, I guess, because on Don't Make Me Go, working with John, he had a lot of agency. He's a tenured actor, and so he was able to say, I want it like this, or can we do this, that, and people respected that, and people were very quick to be on his side and to try to please him.
Accommodate.
I guess. Yeah, accommodate.
Yeah.
And I watched Zoe, who was the actress that I was alongside, and she did those same things, and she had that agency, and I could hear crew members talk about her behind her back and say, oh, she's such a diva, or she's such like a drama queen, and I was just like, it felt like such a double standard, you know, and not to say that it's not the same or can't be the same for men, but just in my experience, like seeing the difference in that was crazy to me, and I guess in general that's something that is taken as, like you said, like self-centered or egotistical to put yourself first or to say I need this or to ask, and people might take that the wrong way or get offended. And I remember being so worried about offending people when it came to like stupid things like my hair or like makeup, and I wouldn't like the way something was done with my makeup, but I'd be like, I don't want to offend them or like do anything wrong, or like I don't want them to hate me or think I'm a diva. But at the end of the day, that video of me is gonna live forever, and it's a part of my career, and it's literally what I do for a living. And so whether or not I hurt anyone's feelings or offend anyone, I have to say, at a certain point, I have to be like, I can't, not everyone is going to like me. Not everyone is going to love me. And some feelings are going to get hurt, but sometimes I have to put myself first, and I have to say, this is about me and my career, you know?
Yeah, but it's not just about you and your career. Because here's what again, so when you say my hair, this, that has to do with the story and the character as a whole.
Right.
And all that is attention to detail. Now you could say, oh, she wants to look like this, she wants to look, well, then I could argue, well, if she does do that, if she does shift this a little bit, does this character come to life a little bit more?
Right.
Does she feel a little bit more confident in who she is?
Yeah.
Does this character take on a little bit of a stronger presence and in turn creates a better story and in turn makes a better movie
Yeah.
and in turn has a stronger effect on the whole? So, this is another thing McConaughey talks about in the Green Lights book. He says, I want to be the egotistical utilitarian. So the concept there is I want to selfishly do all of these things that I know will help the whole the most.
Right.
It's sort of an interesting
Yeah.
way to look at it, right? So instead of saying, well, I'm doing this all for me and my career. Yes, you are. But I want to, before you just start because I think that's where we run into a problem, because then you're still defending yourself.
Right.
You don't have to defend yourself. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when you started to say it, you started to say, well, the career, like this video, yeah, but more than that. Because you can, yes, that's a part of it, but a more important part of it is that you are a part of the whole. And if my part of the whole I feel could be better, then it is my obligation to say something. And I think we've experienced through time people not speaking about things, in particular with females,
Right.
right? It's like, what an amazing thing. You had 2 female directors,
Yeah.
right? You got to work opposite an amazing young female actor, to learn from all of this. And people need to speak up. Now, of course, with social media, as I like to call the podium for everyone who didn't earn it. Right?
Yeah.
Yes, some people could probably speak a little less. But in terms of you doing this thing, your craft, you got to speak up, And I think as long as your intentions are good, as long as the things that you're doing you feel are in alignment with the betterment of the whole, well, then it's like, sorry, if you think that's a diva, that makes me think a lot too, is sort of like these 2 perspectives coming from a place of lack or a place of abundance, right? And I think often people will make choices like that. Well, no, this is my chance. This is it. This is my one chance. That's very different than, no, okay, this opportunity I need to make the most of, not because it's my one chance, but because I can make the most of it, versus I got to put makeup on you because this is my chance to do
Right.
makeup. And when it comes
Right.
out, I got to show people, like, you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's just sort of these 2 different mentalities where you can be selfish for the whole, or you can be selfish because you're worried you're not going to get another,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. You really are. You are such a special individual. And I don't say that lightly. And I think you've learned over time. I speak what I'm feeling and the truth. And it's never, I don't want to say never, but the majority of the time when I say something, I say it because I mean it. And I am so excited for what lies ahead for you. I don't even think we have begun to understand the potential of what you have, and it is humbling to get to work with you, and I'm just grateful for it. I'm grateful for the time that we've had, and not like it's like ending, but I know you're going to be going on to do things, and you'll be writing, you'll be directing probably, you'll be acting more, and it's so cool to be a part of that process with you. And
Yeah.
you are Mia Isaac.
You are Eric Lingwall, and this is the unseen work.
Thank you, friend.
Thank
Hugs.
you.
That was so fun. And this is, that was so good. Oh, I couldn't have scripted it better.
Thank you so much for joining us on The Unseen Work. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. If you want to learn a little bit more about The Unseen Work, follow us on Instagram at The Unseen Work, at The Unseen Work, and that is UNSCENE.